Hi, and welcome to another ArchDaily interview. Knowing that no one builds on their own and that shaping the built environment calls for close collaborations between all the involved actors, ArchDaily has launched an initiative that recognizes and highlights the top collaborators responsible for delivering the best architecture out there. Focusing on the professionals involved in the projects we curate, the strategy seeks to help our community find the right collaborator for its next architectural venture. In order to increase their presence on our platform, ArchDaily will put in the spotlight the expertise and contributions of the engineers, consultants, designers, and contractors involved in our curated selection of published projects. And to talk furthermore about this, we have with us today Squire Partners with partner Tim Gledstone. Hi, Tim.
Hello.
Buro Happold with its senior structural engineer, Matthew Duckett. Hi, Matt.
Hi, everyone.
And SAWA, Socially Active Workshop Architecture, with its founder, Edward Dale Harris. Hi, Ed.
Hi.
Welcome everyone to this interview. My name is Christele Harrouk. I'm an architect and urban designer and the managing editor at ArchDaily, and I'll be your host. Our conversation today will tackle your collaboration in general before focusing on a specific project, which is the Agri-Tech Center in Cambodia. So let's just start. And Tim, can you tell us more about your company and about your scope of work?
Yeah, hello. Yeah, I'm Tim from Squire Partners. Squire Partners is a practice based in London, but we have probably about 30% of our projects are international. Often we're invited to those locations via people who are part of some of our work in London. We have a large cross-section from small projects to quite large projects. We do offices, residential, workspace, but we do our own projects as well, which makes us quite unusual. And we often engage ourselves in the community where we're based very carefully. And we encourage all our clients, all our projects to bed themselves of where they are. And our mission really is a kind of a unique crafted architecture that's special to every place it is.
Thanks, Tim. Ed, can you tell us a bit about, can you give us an introduction?
I founded Socially Active Workshop Architecture in 2014. And it's largely around trying to do socially, environmentally, and mindful architecture in developing countries is where I started. So in a lot of various countries in Africa, building schools, using local materials, such as earth and all kinds of recycled and upcycled materials. And also the bigger element is the community engagement aspect. So we'd like to build with the community and give them ownership of the project. So the process of creating a piece of architecture was owned by the people, and try to just land those sensitively from often international NGOs based in London, and connecting them to rural places. And now also working in the UK in challenging contexts as well, where we're looking at permaculture and sustainable holistic regenerative design. So we're looking beyond just the building, but also to the landscape and the farming, and how do we produce food, energy, and shelter within that kind of holistic design.
Thanks, Ed. Matt, can you tell us a bit more about Buro Happold, please?
Sure. So we're a multidisciplinary engineers. So myself, I'm a structural engineer, but we also have water engineers, MEP engineers. We have city consultants, master planning consultants who work for us. We're really based around the globe. So we've got offices in Europe, Asia, and the US, and we've got we do large projects. We do kind of range of projects, large, medium, small, but we've got a real culture of collaboration. So kind of these like smaller projects like this that come around, we're always really happy to get involved in them and to help, because I think we recognize that as engineers, we should be sharing our skills. We have a responsibility to share our skills to kind of help with these projects.
Okay, thank you. And let's jump right into the project and talk about the Agri-Tech Center in Cambodia. So it's a community agriculture and technology center designed as a collaboration between Squire Partners and SAWA for the Green Shoots Foundation, built by local contractors, farmers, 16 to 25-year-olds with the help of volunteers from UK. The development provides education and agricultural technologies to support children and adults in the local community and facilitates opportunities for enterprise. So let's just, can you tell us a bit, Tim, how did this collaboration start, knowing that this is not your first project together?
Yeah, well, I suppose the collaboration even started with Green Shoots themselves, where the project, it was, the charity itself was created by a friend of mine, a friend through our own children. And the project started off by creating little farmsteads in Cambodia and in the whole Mekong Delta, really, to help families and children, in particular at school, learn how to do farming and learn how to do permaculture, so that they would be encouraged to go to school rather than stay at home and try and do the farming not as well as if they could learn to do it properly. And the project kind of started with me having to run, like any dad, being volunteered to run a 10K, then run a 20K, run in a Mekong hat. And never did we quite realize the project would turn into actually an Agri-Tech Center. It was only really looking at the full life cycle that Green Shoots have been doing of the success of these school projects. Once we got to supporting 40 schools through volunteers helping and delivering this program, the vision revealed that actually having an Agri-Tech Center somewhere where all these schools and sort of more mature farming, wider communities, supporting charities like USAID and any other charity we could find to support us could have a main hub. So that's how the project kind of came about. And so when the project sort of really landed, it was an obvious relationship that we should start. And SAWA was really in its infancy as an idea. So the collaboration started with Ed partly working for us and partly developing SAWA in its infancy at the beginning, which as the project moved into reality through doing shared fundraising with Green Shoots, using our London office, the department store as a base, using our London contacts and using contacts in Europe, Ed was then ready to launch SAWA in its next kind of delivery initiative by then going out into the field and doing an investigation trip and then coming back again. So it's a very thorough and deep collaboration that's kind of born out of working and meeting together at the beginning. So it was the perfect project to work on together. So there's much more I can say about that without the distortion, but I'll let others feed into it.
Maybe Ad can add something to this, and you can tell us how was the initial instruction or like the initial brief?
Yes, so yeah, doing the first research trip, so having worked with Tim on various projects and built this kind of relationship and launched SAWA, being connected to Squires was a really strong model that then enabled this project just to work really well. That me being kind of the delivery kind of eyes going out and having the amazing resource of Squires in London, and that kind of ping-ponging between the two really enabled. Yeah, so the first brief was around first understanding the site and the context and understanding the community, the culture. I think the cultural challenge, we come from our Western mindset, so understanding what is the psyche and the needs and the cultural differences that Cambodia is, the Khmer culture that is in Cambodia and within these communities, and how can we best reach them and enable them to become more self-sufficient. And what we're finding in Cambodia is there's big multinationals coming in and selling pesticides and tractors to these farmers. And then they basically they get a boost of their yields for year one, and then it drops off. And so these are unsustainable farming techniques. And so how do we, so what Green Shoots have been doing incredibly with, and in the Mekong area with all these 40 schools, is setting up little veg gardens and teaching these sustainable farming practices to the children. And the children then go home and teach the parents, and it kind of ripples out across the community. So they've been incredibly successful in these little veg gardens in the schools and various outreach projects. But what they realized is they needed a center to be a sort of primary showcase example of all the different farming techniques. So not just, the veg or the rice, but also the frogs and the various different chickens and all the kind of different animals and fishing. So there was a myriad. So the idea of this center, and now we're kind of, this is what came into fruition, was this showcase. So we had a classroom at the center of it, and then these various kind of plots that could be stimulation for enterprise, so that they come and learn this technique and go, oh yeah, I could set up an enterprise and replicate this.
I think something that's, just to jump in now, I think what's really important in very big projects turns out to be really important in smaller projects as well, which is to almost look at the dream ambition and look at a much longer plan. So what that means, as an example, we were talking about, they realized by looking at a sort of 30-year plan, the mission was to get to 40 schools. Once you get to 40 schools, then we'll try and get a site. And the brief we were given then was to do a master plan, even though we knew we couldn't deliver the master plan day one or even day 300. But if you've got a master plan for the next 10 years, what that enables you to do is to work out the most critical catalysts and the facilitating elements of that master plan, which is something that Ed and I had worked on before in the Reach School. Is if you're going to if you can be using mud bricks, then you need a mud brick making facility, and you also probably need a toilet. And with those two things, you can then start building the building. But you need the kind of toilet, a little kitchen, and a mud building facility. And then you need to work out where the pond's going to be, because that's where the mud's going to come from. So we drew up together and worked with Green Shoots on this, the fully completed master plan, and then we could pick perfectly the sequence for phase one, but designing it in a way that we looked at the end vision, but we also could change that vision in certain ways as the brief might evolve, which is something I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later. And that's really important too, because the world doesn't stay the same, as we all painfully know right now.
Yeah, the time element, I think often not, or maybe some architects do consider very fully, but this was really paramount to our design, was understanding the sequencing and the time element. And so the first phase was just building a little shack and the first pond and making these bricks. And that kind of then revealed lots of information about the site. So when we're working and designing in permaculture, lots of it's about observation, understanding where is the water already on the land, where's its natural movements, where is the kind of densest ecology on site, where do we want to disturb the land and bring in access, where do we not want to disturb the land and really keep that. So it is working really sensitively with the kind of being on site. And this is why I like to be fully immersed in all my projects. So I often live on my sites, and that's what I did for the first 4 years of SAWA, was moving between client site to site, so I could be immersed in the culture and the ecology and the water systems and understand all the patterns and flows of all these systems, so that we could then sensitively appropriate the space for the building and then such things. So we had a design from London, but everything was constantly shifting and evolving and making sure that it fitted and worked with the community. And and so that was a really, really nice dialogue. And with the modern technology of WhatsApp as well, and all these different things, I was able to kind of connect straight to Tim and kind of go, right, what about this? What about this? And it was really amazing just to kind of, and with all the volunteers as well. So when I wasn't on site, we had volunteers on site. We had some great architect volunteers coming in, and they, filled a really important chapter when we were doing the tender set, working with the contractor. And so this modern world is really enabling that kind of cross-fertilization, that shared understanding and that collaboration to be more fruitful.
And since now we're talking about everyone's contribution to the project, Matt, how would you describe basically also your contribution, and how do you see, how is the evolution of the workflow?
Yeah, so we'd worked with Ed and Squire Partners previously at another project in Sierra Leone, George Brooks School, and it was kind of a similar construction typology, also mud bricks. We had prior experience working with mud bricks. I worked in Zambia in 2016, built a lot of buildings using mud bricks, and so as Ed said, like the designs evolve as you get to site, and you realise your what you've got to work with on site. And we realised that it was a particularly silty kind of soil there, which actually didn't really lend itself particularly well to mud bricks. And so we were able to then look at kind of local limes, look at stabilizing the bricks to kind of make them more suitable for construction. And kind of as well as that, we were able to, during the kind of master planning, kind of feed into as well, like the site utilities. We had water engineers kind of working on the project as well, looking at positioning for the tank, the best kind of rainwater harvesting and collection systems. And so it was great being involved from this early stage, so as we could inform the kind of the utilities and the technical design of the master plan, and particularly as the architecture was evolving. I think because we had quite a broad group of engineers working on the project, it allowed us to be flexible, and obviously, SAWA and Squire Partners were being very flexible at the time as well. So the kind of workflow is very open. It was great to be involved in, because you could make decisions very quickly as new information arises. And if there were things that we needed, we had to get compression tests done on the bricks. We had people on site on the ground who were able to go and do that for us. So it made it a very effective working relationship.
It was really exciting. Just to jump in on Matt's comment, but there was a volunteer engineer who developed with Matt and I this compression. So we could, instead of taking the bricks, each time we made a brick and have to sort of ship it off to a factory in the city, which was some, day's travel away, we could actually test all the bricks on site with a very simple load-bearing compression test machine to test the quality of the bricks. And this was, again, another really great collaboration with the use of volunteers, of engineers connecting with us who were kind of overseeing and making sure that it all worked. So that was a really interesting moment to kind of we talked about accelerated vernacular with Tim as well, this kind of idea of, it's local materials, but it's with a real professionalism and a quality.
And technologies, right?
And the technology, yeah.
I think that, a lot of people, if because it was such like a war, it was in a very silty area, a lot of people would look at that soil type and say it's not suitable for mud bricks. But being able to do the tests, being able to work closely together, and look at different amounts of stabilization, we were able to use lime to make the bricks stronger, which then avoided, it would have been very easy to say, oh, let's just use concrete blocks and to leave it at that. But we really wanted to push that vernacular architecture, really wanted to be able to reduce the embodied carbon of the structure. And so being able to offer that targeted technical input at a very early stage enabled us to keep mud bricks on the table.
Matt, Buro Happold have the Share Our Skills program. Can you tell us a bit, what is that?
Yes, so it's a fantastic program that we have, which we do a lot of our development work under. It was kind of set up, it was about 8 years ago. We had individuals who often spent a lot of their personal time working on development projects. These were generally individuals' passion projects. And so the company wanted to be able to offer formal support and time to enable people to keep doing the great work that they were doing. And so it's basically company provided time to enable us to spend time working on these projects for, I guess, organizations, for charities who wouldn't normally be able to afford professional fees, basically. and you know, it's not just development projects abroad. You know, it's projects within the cities we work in. We've got a number in London at the moment, which is where I'm based. And you know, it's really, we've been able to do a huge amount with it. You know, since 2014, we've done, I think, over 55 projects in more than 20 countries around the world under this program. So the company's kind of awarded that time. And so we were able to get that time for the Agri-Tech Center, and it enabled us to really pull in lots of disciplines. And you know, we had interest from around the world, from people in our Hong Kong office, in the US offices, on working on the project, and we were able to really kind of collate lots of people's knowledge using this time, so as people didn't have to go and, you know, spend evenings doing it, to be able to help the project.
Thank you. So going back now to the project, the site and the context are super specific, and the design decisions were basically made in response to the tropical climate. So Tim, basically my question for you is, how were you able, regardless of all these constraints, to maximize the functional potential of the building?
I think it's that term accelerated vernacular, I think is really important, where you can create a significant difference, because we absolutely love vernacular, but vernacular can only go at a certain speed. And we've already heard how vulnerable some of the materials are there. In fact, timber's pretty scarce. We did build a few little timber structures, and they are vulnerable. It's hard to make them really strong, and they get run down quite quickly. So understanding certain modern materials that are still readily available, we weren't sure, is it, maybe we could use bamboo, but actually in this, that's a very traditional material, but some of the advanced techniques in bamboo, but it's not ideal. There's not a huge amount of bamboo in this part of the world either. But in the local markets, there were a lot of regular angled sections of steelwork, just standard sizes that we could basically develop a very simple Meccano set out of to create a framework for the mud bricks to sit within. Another layer we wanted to add is the thing also with vernacular and craft is it takes generations to learn, and hours, and we could have dipped into, and we have brought in elements of weaving and qualities like that, but we wanted to make a volunteer who might be maybe very well qualified in one area. We've already heard about architects coming, engineers coming. There are other people who are studying permaculture, farm to table kind of, and general tourists who want to come and spend time. How can we use designs that people without decades of training could sit down and do in a week? And that's where we developed simple weaving techniques using split bamboo, and a production line of ideas that would enable slightly qualified but unskilled labor, and just unskilled labor, everyone to be able to do without huge amounts of training. We were designing a framework that we could design the kit of parts and just ask the metal supplier to provide the metal at set lengths and just drill the holes in, and that could be bolted or welded where it absolutely needed to be. So as a sort of set, we created this sort of unusual harmony of very, very sort of new vernacular, if you like, the mud bricks, which we brought from somewhere else with the accelerator and the lime in it. We'd brought in woven bamboo, split bamboo, which was bamboo being put together in a way which they hadn't done before, because we're using simple metal frames to weave in between, which we had mocked up and run in our model shop, but then Ed was doing it on site with the teams. So when you visit other sort of permaculture buildings that are built more in a true vernacular way, they don't have the robustness of our Agri-Tech Center. It basically brings in some of the other techniques that you see widely used in these hot climates, with the crinkly tin roof that hovers above the main structure and has lots of, sort of natural cooling. but other techniques that are coming from USAID with these catching all the water that comes off the roof into our filtration tanks. And there's 3 tanks that create drinking water from the roof. And then going back, when I visited the site, we then used techniques we've been using with computer aid for who we teamed up with on the project as well, to supply laptops, classrooms, but actually to provide lighting and power to the Agri-Tech Center. Because when I got there, they were still starting up the generator in order to do a PowerPoint. With a small donation of $200, we could provide power and electricity to just using the technology that was already in the market. There was a little stall selling, with energy being so expensive, solar technology is actually racing away in Samrong. And so we wouldn't know that unless we were there walking the marketplace. So it's a really, I suppose, a unique way of putting together everything that's already there. But using our international knowledge to know what's robust and strong and long lasting. And it's something that I think what's great is conversations, thoughts we're having there are conversations we're having back in one of the world's leading capital cities about how you do steel structures in a way that you can demount them and reuse them and reuse elements using standard sections rather than lots of different parts is quite an interesting philosophy that we've already established in the Agri-Tech Center.
I think the word accelerated the vernacular fits perfectly, but do you think that the techniques that you basically could produce there, like, do you think they can be reproduced by local communities eventually after your first intervention?
Absolutely. I think as long as everyone's part of the learning process, anyone who takes part in these programs, I think you still need a conductor. All these projects need a leader, and that's what Ed volunteers huge amounts of his time and income to dedicate 6 months to being that conductor. But what you have is an orchestra who haven't yet played together. So you do need to, and you don't know what instruments they've got, and you've got to change or try and steer your program from the people you do know who are coming, and you can organize events around that. And that's exactly how Ed and Manise from the Green Shoots Foundation, when you know certain visitors are coming, you can plan certain events. But then there's local people who can come and learn, and they can, in fact, some of the team that helped build it are now manage the center itself. So Mr. Liu and his family, who are only contracted to build it, now run the center itself. The local contractor, who sometimes you do need the specialist elements, such as doing all the irrigation and the plumbing. That family, he dedicated a lot of his time to it, became very passionately involved in the project, and he's now one of our sort of trustees on site. He's taking over the local charity status of the project, enabling it to grow.
Ed, what is the impact of the project on the community and the village, in your opinion? Because you were like the one who was there.
Yeah.
There's the education elements, which is obviously huge. With showcasing alternative ways to make buildings and also grow food. So, and then there's also various technologies. So there's the biogas, the solar. Solar that they're already kind of aware of, and the rainwater harvesting. That was the filtration. So showcasing these various technologies and examples that can then be replicated, and they can see them firsthand. There's a real kind of culture of, unless you can demonstrate it, show it, prove it, then they can copy it. So that I think once we had and same with the building technology as well. So the bricks we were making, that idea, when they've seen the process and the product, they then that teaching can then ripple out and be copied. So the impact on so there's all the children that they've touched, and then now there's a center which has got some shining examples of this. You're just elevating an existing model of what they're already doing and the impact they're already having, and you're just taking it to the next level. So it's just going to be able to reach more people and empower more people with knowledge and wisdom about how they can come out of poverty and hardship through food poverty and economic poverty, which is rife. And there's a real challenge with, you know, the lack of timber and bamboo and the deforestation that's happening in that whole region. So, you know, there's a huge, you know, push for, you know, them protecting their own landscape and making sure that actually, yeah, this tree is holding the soil together, which is protecting me from erosion and all of these knock-on effects of destroying your natural environment. So they're learning, like we're all learning all over the world, you know, the importance of trees and these regenerative forms of agriculture. So actually, how can we have a robust and strong, you know, with their synthesis of, you know, modern technologies, whether that's solar or a little bit of cement or a little bit of steel, those in those right places, we can actually, you know, reduce our carbon cost, but also thrive in an ecological way as well. So it's just appropriating and balancing these different factors. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, you did. And like talking about like all, like, let's say international know-how, thinking about it from a local perspective, Matt, how would you like, what do you consider your biggest input to the project?
I think our biggest input, it was bringing that previous knowledge that we had kind of around working with stabilized soil, as well as we'd previously done some biogas projects as well, which we were able to give Ed some good advice on there as to previous systems. And so I think it was just that being able to bring a really wide knowledge set to help the guys be able to deliver the project.
And did the local community, what did the local community give you back in terms of also know-how? Because they've been building there for like years, you know, so.
Yeah, I think there was, it was great having a local engineer on board as well, and with the local contractor, because, you know, we've very much developed the design, and we were able to send it to them to get their feedback on it. And, you know, there were particular conversations around things like, you know, using rice husks as part of the render on the building, which is something which you don't usually think about, and it's great to kind of be not be challenged, but, you know, to be able to think about problems like that, and think about how we can solve them. I think the other one was, you know, we really were trying to push for, I think, fully bolted connections on the trusses to kind of remove those kind of health and safety issues that you get with site welding. And I think it's, again, there wasn't that kind of comfort of doing the bolted connections in country, and so we were able to speak with the local contractor and basically get to a point where we could, you know, have all the frames welded in shop in a controlled environment, so as that kind of welded aspect to the frame could be kept, you know, and reduce the kind of risk, the health and safety risk that you have with site welding.
When should we, actually, this is a question for everyone, when should we be expecting the finalization of the second phase of the project?
The first question to answer is, what is the second phase of the project? because it does, things change. So there is an immediate second phase, which was to slightly formalize our little kitchen building, which at the moment only the toilets and the there's a lovely little twisted roof. What do you call that type of roof, Ed? You did
reciprocal
roof. So it makes a perfect little pop-up kitchen. We did another charity raising event to try and get the kitchen going. So the last time I went, the methane toilets actually can run the stove itself. So we had a sort of farm to table kind of test event, which was excellent. So the thinking was, had COVID not hit and had visitors still be coming, and Ed was going to go back out, we were going to build out the visitors' kitchen with adding some shutters to that, some screens to that. We now know more about the prevailing winds that can blow out the stove, and we could do with an extra sink and a few details, but we were going to complete that. Phase 3 was going to be then a guest house for the visitors. Now, as things have evolved, the relationship with the hotel where Ed and I both stayed and all guests stay, actually that helps feed back into the community, and it's not that far away. There's some of the local houses and friends of the centre who help build are also offering up guest bedrooms, so we don't need necessarily to build our own guest houses when we can feed off the local community, and that's better all round for the local community. And we're not getting the visitors still. Hopefully it will change soon, so we don't want to build the kitchen yet, but we are working really closely with a sister charity called Children of the Mekong, who have a silk production and product, sort of fine products, so almost silkworm to Paris kind of journey they go on. And they in Siem Reap, they have a facility where they do all the silk weaving. There's a real interest in us planting the mulberry trees and rearing silkworms. So that is actually now the new phase 2. And the Agri-Tech Center is designed to be flexible. We still have classes coming in all the time, but we're going to turn one of the storerooms into silkworm production and see how well they take and the quality of the silk we can generate. So but the master plan can handle it, and the flexibility of the main building it's just a perfect building for multiple uses. And many functions can fit within it. So I think that's a great success. Never did we think it was going to become a silkworm production center as well, but it can be. And so that's an interesting next phase. I think when tourism picks up, and in particular, you're getting this sort of educational tourism, permaculture is on everyone's tongue more and more. And this education center could even, I think we're going to get a lot more visitors from even other countries. We're in conversations with Green Shoots only this week about a program in Kenya. They've got similar problems and they want an example center set there as well. So it can adapt and change. And it's happening the best it can in these difficult times. But so the answer is we don't quite know when they're all going to happen, but silkworm production is coming. We didn't quite know that the frogs were going to be such a successful rearing exercise, and now they have a little a fishery as well. So it's organic, it's adaptive, and that's what it should be. And what's great is it doesn't matter. We would love to all visit there more often, but we can all turn our hands to assisting anything that's required.
So we can say that the time factor was in your favor.
But it's in some regards, I think having collaborative relationships around the world works in everyone's favor. So when something happens, you can get onto the other end of a phone. The 3G is actually 4G is actually exceptional on site, whereas internet's really hard to get. But even that enables us all to work together and keep in touch with the community. A huge post-COVID survey was undertaken by Green Shoots, and that's where this kind of latest thinking of what's the next move should come from. But Green Shoots have the relationship with us, SAWA and Buro Happold, and we remain keen. I think more projects, regardless of where they are, should stay alive and remain friends of their creators and the people that use them.
Okay, so as we're ending our conversation, my final question to you is, how would each one of you describe what would be the general key features for a successful collaboration? Because obviously from what we see and from what you told us, the project started somewhere and it ended up, I'm not going to say different, but it was flexible, it changed, it took all of your inputs, the local input also. So how would you describe a successful partnership? You can start them.
Okay, I'll start. Yeah, I'll kick off then. So I think from my point of view, I think our great collaboration, I think what I would encourage others to do is it's exactly some of the points that we were discussing, that you need to be able to think, you need the experience, but you need to be able to design there and then, find out the facts, and then have a dynamic team that can adapt, constantly workshop, constantly listening, but also constantly doing it with a full open mind to what's coming your way, but be prepared to be able to work fast. And that's one of the great attractions of these kind of projects, when the community will buy into it. It's amazing. I mean, Ed, it was pretty much start to finish 4 or 5 months, wasn't it? Really, from when you were there.
Yeah.
4 months.
Yeah, I think the whole project came. I was there for 6 months, I think, about that. Yeah.
Yeah, the construction was where you've got to do all the thinking up front. And we've done dynamic workshops in our studios with Buro Happold, with Ed, and do test workshops in workshop environments. But then when you get on the ground, to do the research as well before you, like Ed did a whole field trip to see what assumptions are right or wrong, and then to bring that data back, and then all of us adapt again. I mean, we did a complete redesign as well to our assumption of the materials that might be there turned out not to be correct. Because we designed something much more traditional to start with, but it turned out those materials are no longer available unless you pay a premium, which was not the point of what we were doing.
You're right. I think the key is that having that flexibility. Like when you go to site, so many things change, so many things in a design can change. You have to be able to be pragmatic and be able to have your design adapting to the local needs, local input, and any problems which come up on site.
Yeah, and I think the other key aspect of collaboration is that kind of relationship that we've established over time, and we've gone through various projects together, and so building on that existing knowledge and that shared relationships, and we know we tested it in this context and that context. So the continuity of building on existing relationships, I think, is a really strong element of collaboration. And yeah, the idea that yes, everything is constantly changing, and no one's kind of getting too the ownership. I'm always trying to share the ownership, and as people feel ownership of the project, they have an influence. So the collaboration with the local people, with the volunteers who come out and do it, the various the local engineers, the local architects, the local students who came down and helped out. So as you dissolve any sense of ownership, and actually it's about anyone who comes to that site or comes to the project has an influence, has an impact. And for me, I'm always trying to harness that willingness to give, so everyone, when they see a project and they see the goodness in the project, they want to give and be part of it. And it's, for me, my challenge is always to try and land that person, what's their knowledge, skills and experience, and where can they best fit within the project. So for me, it's, welcoming that and in an open, transparent way, and being able to adapt and change as everything does around us.
I think technology is very, very helpful,
because communication, from everything that I have heard, is, I think it's worth mentioning that at least communication was possible because of technology. So that's why you could actually test stuff, ask questions, and obviously this didn't go through a thread of email. Obviously this was way faster in terms of your collaboration. You were saying, Tim?
No, I think you're absolutely right. The digital technology was very helpful, and it can save time, particularly got time zone differences. But one little story was what colour to paint the water tanks, and Ed says, look, these 5 colours available, and everyone's got a slightly different opinion on site of what they think or not. But by the time they woke up in the morning, it took my team 5 minutes in Photoshop just to send over the image, a photograph of it finished. And they're like, everyone's like, oh yes, I can see red ochre color is by far the best.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add is your questions have largely been around like what have we brought to Cambodia, but I also feel Mr. Lun, for example, he could dig a hole, like kind of buttering a piece of toast. The skills and knowledge and wisdom that's in Cambodia as well, and this cultural exchange. I try to see all my projects as an exchange rather than, we're the rich country with the skills, knowledge, and experience. Actually, it's not that everyone has skills, knowledge, and experience, and so it's all about that collaboration and that shared. There's no kind of hierarchy within any of this. This is just actually, we have one set of skills and knowledge. They have a different set of skills and knowledge. And how can we work best together?
Perfectly said.
And get to the best results.
So yeah, I've learned a huge amount, and I owe a real debt to Cambodia and everything that it's showed me and taught me. So I feel really honored to have been to that space and connected with that culture. So a lot of gratitude and thanks there.
Thank you everyone for being part of this conversation and for for all these interesting insight and information. And Tim,
I think my little final conclusion to anyone who's actually listening and watching to this would be really to encourage you to get involved with these kind of projects, but actually even slightly selfishly for the Agri-Tech Center, visitors are very welcome. Anyone visiting actually helps the center keep going. There's an open door policy, and I would encourage it just makes for a much richer experience visiting these great countries, as if you can also do it with a little bit of time given, learning and exchanging, as Ed said, with the town and the Agri-Tech Center. So please come and visit. That's what I wanted to add.
Yeah, it's always doing calls for volunteers for your projects, aren't you? So that's a great way to get involved.
Definitely. It's an incredible experience.